Amiibo, Nintendo's stab at toys to life all the way back in 2014 that continues on to this day. Releasing in numerous waves in different series, there is a whole lot of them. Super Smash Bros. For Wii U was the first game to get Amiibo, eventually getting a figure for every fighter, meaning that some Pokémon were getting in on the fun. With the first wave including the main 8 of the Smash roster, the Pikachu Amiibo has been around since day one. As the waves continued on, we had the likes of Charizard, Greninja, Lucario, and Jigglypuff join the ranks. Mewtwo also made his grand return as the first DLC character in the game, and so it eventually got an Amiibo for itself. Amiibo are great in that they have use in many games, not just one. Obviously all the Smash Amiibo had the big draw of training an AI to fight in the game. But they could also be used in other games, even if it was just something simple, such as a skin. This worked really well for most Amiibo. However, the Pokemon Amiibo were a big exception. Their usability was far lesser compared to the rest. Scanning Amiibo into Mario Maker gave costumes for the Mystery Mushroom. Most of these costumes came with unique sounds alongside the outfit, but the Pokemon ones did not. They eventually had event outfits for some Pokemon that came with the whole shebang, but the Amiibo ones were never updated to match. Yoshi's Woolly World would give you special costumes for your Yarn Yoshi depending on the Amiibo you scanned. This game accepts the likes of Sonic and Mega Man, but the Pokemon ones give you a generic Amiibo outfit. So while you are getting a nice figure, not the greatest since these were the Amiibo early days, the Pokemon Amiibo just have a lesser amount of value in terms of in-game bonuses. Nintendo was going all in on Amiibo, and the Pokemon were for whatever reason being held back and not able to fully take part in the fun. Being a fan of both Pokemon and Amiibo, I obviously was going to buy all of them no matter what. Even going to the lengths of an hour-long bike ride with a flat tire uphill to get the rare Lucario Amiibo from my local Toys R Us. It would just be nice if those efforts were rewarded the same as if it was any other Amiibo. As a side note, for those who weren't collectors a decade ago, Amiibo could be really fucking rare on release. Add in that I was a teenager without the ability to buy stuff online. I had to go through some hoops back in the day to get some of these, but those are stories for another day. These 6 were all we had at first, just being the Pokemon that were in Smash. But by now we started getting series outside of Smash Bros, so surely Pokemon would be coming in some form, especially with the release of the Animal Crossing Amiibo cards. Pokemon cards are massive, Amiibo are massive, Amiibo cards exist. Many people asked how come we never got them. Surely it's just leaving money on the table. With 721 Pokemon at the time, surely we could have had years of Amiibo card releases, but it just never came. Pokemon was truly just not really interested in Amiibo. It's possible it comes from their own series of NFC figures that predate Amiibo, which were used for Pokemon Rumble U. Alongside this game released 23 NFC figures that could be scanned in to obtain the corresponding Pokemon in-game. They were sold in blind balls and some were even exclusive to promotions. This is also another separate can of worms that I'll maybe go into another time. I just personally don't have any experience or knowledge about them to talk about them right now. I would love to get them all one day, but they are quite pricey, so that's a hopefully later down the line kind of purchase. That aside, I think it's possible that because of these, Pokemon felt they had already dipped their toes into the concept and deemed Pokemon Amiibo to not be worth it, but that is just speculation. We wouldn't see another Pokemon Amiibo until Pokken Tournament came around, where the first print of the game came with a Shadow Mewtwo Amiibo card. Our first ever Pokemon Amiibo that wasn't Smash, and it was a card? Could it be the Pokemon Amiibo card dream is still alive? Ultimately, the answer was no. And I'm kinda relieved, because I still haven't even finished collecting the Animal Crossing cards. The Pokemon ones would be an extra hell. This Amiibo card has a very interesting use, in that it unlocks the character Shadow Mewtwo to be playable for 24 hours. So it unlocks a character and you have to scan it every day. Okay. But if you beat the main story of the game, Shadow Mewtwo is permanently unlocked. So if you beat the single player, the card becomes useless. I have never used my card. It sits in the back of my Animal Crossing card binder, never being used. It's such a weird idea for a card. It's not even usable in the Switch port, as both Mewtwo and Shadow Mewtwo are just unlocked from the start, so it remains useless for me. One of the most baffling decisions, not just for the Pokemon Amiibo, but Amiibo as a whole, it just really doesn't need to exist. Speaking of things that don't need to exist, we have the Detective Pikachu Amiibo. After a 2-year gap since the Shadow Mewtwo card, Pokemon comes back with an even more confusing Amiibo. Detective Pikachu, which is conceptually fine as an Amiibo, has the amazing function of just replaying cutscenes. There's always a debate about certain amiibo functions as to whether or not they're locking away gameplay features behind physical DLC, but replayable cutscenes? Like, are you serious? Anyone that wants to rewatch cutscenes will just watch them online, especially because this amiibo wasn't cheap. Instead of being your standard amiibo, which I think costed about $15 Canadian at the time, this amiibo was jumbo-sized, and so it had the price tag of $40 fucking dollars. So not only does its functionality suck, it is stupidly big and doesn't fit in with the rest of the collection, and cost almost as much as the game did. This release made me really glad Pokemon barely touched amiibo, because this shit is dumb as hell. The absolute worst part about these amiibo is that they don't work like their regular counterparts. Like any Mario amiibo can be trained in Smash no matter what series it's from. Same with Link and every other character in Smash with a non-Smash amiibo. But not Pokemon. If you want to train a Pikachu amiibo in Smash, you need to track down the original Pikachu amiibo, which was out of print at this time if I remember correctly. You can't use your $40 oversized Detective Pikachu amiibo. When Smash Ultimate came around, you could use it to get the Detective Pikachu spirit for free, but you still can't train it. I hate this thing. When I packed up a majority of my amiibo to make space for other things, it was too big to fit into the baggies I was using, so it got left out, and I have to see it every day alongside the few amiibo I kept sealed. I look at it and I'm reminded that I spent $40 on this useless piece of trash. At least the Shadow Mewtwo card was a pack-in for a game I was planning on buying anyway. After the disappointment of the Detective Pikachu amiibo, things fell silent until the Smash Ultimate reveal that every fighter was returning. This meaning that fighters not in the previous entry could be getting amiibo, including Pokemon. And so come 2019, more Smash Pokemon amiibo were released. First up being Pichu, then followed by Pokemon Trainer. Now Pokemon Trainer was an interesting case, as this is the first amiibo of a character that can switch fighters, so how is it going to work, and how does Charizard, who was a solo fighter when he got his amiibo, work now? Well, they just simply both work as Pokemon Trainer, but Charizard starts off as Charizard, and the Squirtle and Ivysaur amiibo that released later on also start as the Pokemon that match the amiibo. So we have 4 different amiibo that are all effectively the same fighter. But Ivysaur and Charizard starting off as themselves is cool. It is kind of mentally taxing trying to train an amiibo how to handle 3 entire different movesets at once. An idea I had that I thought would have been neat to see was if the Pokemon Trainer amiibo could switch freely between the 3, but the Squirtle, Ivysaur, and Charizard amiibo were all locked to being exclusively themselves. Just something to keep them as the character the amiibo is, and help differentiate them from the standard Pokemon Trainer. With the returning fighters out of the way, the last Pokemon amiibo we would get from Ultimate would be Incineroar, the only Pokemon newcomer in this installment, the 13th and currently final Pokemon amiibo. These 5 are an interesting collection compared to the original 6, as with them being far later into the amiibo pipeline, they are insanely higher quality, but at the same time, they have far less usability. Their only unique use in any game is Smash Bros. Everywhere else, they just give the standard generic reward. This time, however, is not entirely on the fault of Pokemon. Amiibo use in games have rapidly declined. Mostly it's just a couple of amiibo do something special, usually only ones from the same series as the game, and the rest is just in-game money or loot. The most recent Zelda game, Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, didn't even get its own unique amiibo, something that's become a bit of a trend for the Zelda series since Breath of the Wild. It seems Nintendo has come to realize that a lot of people aren't really buying these things for their uses in-game, but because they're just nice Nintendo collectibles. But it sucks to see it go. I remember getting a new amiibo back then and being able to scan it into Smash to train it, as well as scanning it into the likes of Mario Maker, Yoshi, Mario Kart, etc. to get the bonuses. They didn't impact the games at all. They were purely just cosmetic, but it was awesome seeing the figure I bought have a special use in so many titles. And while Pokemon was always on the lesser extent of it, I'd take the half-assed Mario Maker costumes over some rupees and fish in Zelda any day. Well, this video took some turns. It started with me just wanting to talk about the Pokemon amiibo, and some emotion took over at times, especially with that big dumb fucking Detective Pikachu amiibo. I wasn't sure where this was headed, but it turns out it was headed here. Pokemon has always been a part of my life. I've been collecting amiibo since basically the start. I didn't get any day one, as I think Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire released the same day and I needed a new GameCube controller, but like a week or 2 later, I bought my first one, Yoshi. And while I didn't have anything to use him on yet, I fell in love with him so much that I went back the next day and picked up Fox, Kirby, and Pikachu. So Pokemon amiibo have been a part of my overall amiibo journey since pretty much the start, and I've experienced the highs and lows of all of it. The more I talk about this, the more I convince myself to just make a big video about amiibo, so I guess I'll keep most of the stories for that. If you listened to this entire ramble, I want to thank you so very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like or even subscribing, as both really do help out the channel. Also, I would love to hear from you in the comments down below, even if it's just like what your favorite Pokemon amiibo is. If you'd like to further support the channel, consider becoming a member. Doing so grants you some perks like emotes, as well as your name appearing on screen in future videos. This has been Big Blast 99, and I hope you all have yourselves a goddamn good one.